Before the video begins, I want to say thank you to everyone who gave me constructive criticism on my last video. I know it's definitely not the best thing I've ever made, but I have been making improvements. As some of you can already tell, I have better audio quality, which was a big criticism in my last video. As well as the video felt very floaty and there wasn't really much of a structure, this video there will be much more of a structure, I can assure you of that. And I'll throw in a few more jokes in there and I'll make it much more interesting for you guys watching, because I know that the last video was kind of boring. I just wanted to get it out and get my opinions out of the way. So I hope you find this video much more interesting. And again, the criticism is very much appreciated. I want to grow as a creator and criticism is the perfect way for me to do that. So please, tell me if there's something wrong with the video. I would much like to hear it. Thank you once again, and now onto the video. Okay, I know I said I was going to take this YouTube thing more seriously, but that doesn't mean that I have to cover good games or games that I actually like. Because to be honest, I'm talking about games that have no right to exist, and that's way more interesting than some game I'm going to suck off for 10 minutes. I mean, I could talk about a good game, the Halo series is full of them, but if missing the mark is something all these games I reviewed do, then I guess consistency is something I should strive for. I also now have an avatar on screen, because I'm too much of a pussy to show my face, and he's going to be saying all the funny mean words and look all mad when the bad game is bad again. Don't take this as a surprise, almost every other YouTube reviewer does it, so why shouldn't I? So now that that's over with, let's talk about Halo. Microsoft wanted to capitalize on the mobile market with a cheap shitty game to make a quick buck off of retards like me. Oh wait, I mean Spartan Assault. Halo Spartan Assault. Okay, I'm not calling this game that for the entirety of this video, and instead I'm going to be calling it Halo Portable because that's more convenient and it's what it accurately is. So, Halo Portable is a top-down dual-stick shooter released in 2013 on the Xbox One, Xbox 360, Steam, and the fucking Microsoft phone. I wonder how that worked out for them. In Halo Portable, you play out battle simulations taking place between the events of Halo 3 and Halo 4. There are two words I want you to keep in mind, and those are battle simulations, because it is actually an integral part to the story and one of the biggest reasons why I hate it. But before we get to the story, let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay in this game is fairly simple. You use the left stick to move around and the right stick to aim, and then you use R2 or whatever trigger to shoot. For keyboard and mouse, the controls are what you would expect from a game of this kind. You can also pick up both human and Covenant grenades and use both of them if you want to. There are normal grenades, which explode on impact, there are sticky grenades, which explode when they're stuck to something after a few seconds, and incendiary grenades, which I never used. And you can drive vehicles. There are several missions in the game which have you sit in a tank, or maybe have you use a ghost if you want to. They're completely optional. Now I know that in Halo, the whole idea is that the vehicles are difficult to drive or they're just kind of archaic and janky, but the vehicles in this game are really, really bad to control. If you hit the ghost off of anything, you will lose complete control of it and you will be completely thrown off and won't be able to actually drive it correctly. Even though there are several sections with the tanks, they just kind of flail all over the place. It's kind of hard to get them aligned and try and get them to drive correctly. It really feels like the tanks should have been made for a first-person perspective and not for a top-down view. The mission structure themselves are very reminiscent of mobile games. They're very simple, they're around 5 minutes long, but some of them are so fucking tedious that it felt like an hour playing some of them. The tanks feel way too floaty, and it doesn't help that these missions go on for fucking ever. They have these giant open maps, which I'm surprised would even load on a phone or something of this sorts, but it's just such a pain in the ass because you have to go around looking for all these different objectives, which they don't tell you specifically where they are or give you a pointer. It's just this tiny little dot on your minimap. And because there is no save feature in the game, if you fuck up at all or in the very end of the mission, you have to restart it from the very beginning. I'm sorry, but I would kind of like it if after destroying the 3 objectives I spent 5 fucking minutes doing, I would like if the game would actually save. But no, instead you step out of your tank and that one wraith that comes beside you and kills you, oh, you gotta restart the entire mission, fucko. And it's not even like it makes the game harder or adds a level of skill, it just makes the game fucking tedious and annoying. Anyway, ball joint tanks aside, the normal mission structure isn't too bad. There's usually 2 or 3 different mission types that it goes through. Those mission types being defend an area, kill enemies, or kill an objective. This is basically the gameplay throughout the entire game. There are a few missions that don't go through with this, but it's very, very formulaic. In fact, the missions I actually enjoyed the most were the ones where you were just defending, and if the entire game was built around that, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. These missions can be genuinely intense, especially when you have a skull attached, like for example Famine, where ammo is more scarce and you have to sort of be on your feet all the time, always looking for enemy weapons to pick up so that you can defend your teammates. Skulls like Famine are made kind of useless though by just these infinite weapon chains that just sit there. You can just sit next to them and it will just infinitely feed you ammo. Before the mission begins, you get a choice of 3 different weapons to choose to replace out your current ones. You get skulls and you get a booster. Those 3 weapons you can choose from are the Spartan laser, the rocket launcher, and the sniper rifle. None of these weapons you can obtain normally in the game, and you have to use XP you get from finishing missions. The skulls are like any normal Halo game, but kind of shit, as they really either just make the game more tedious or they're just completely useless to even try using. And then there's also boosters, which will allow you to either give yourself a damage boost or an XP boost or a health boost. They're fairly simple. You can use those by getting XP as well. And of course, there's also Spartan abilities. These include a healing bubble or moving a bit faster, just to name a few. The weapons work like so you can't actually semi-fire any of them, like the pistol for example. In order for you to shoot it at a high rate of fire, you have to literally hold down the trigger. I don't know why this was an option and there wasn't just single fire included where you could just tap the trigger, but whatever. The only thing the Magnum is even useful for anyway is getting rid of grunts because it kills them in one hit. And surprisingly enough, I found the plasma pistol to be quite useful near the end of my playthrough, as if you can actually land a shot with it, it manages to take down all the enemy's health. Melee is very inconsistent. There's no real indication of how far you can hit an enemy from, or if you're even going to hit them at all. I've had times where I was a good body length away from an enemy and I was still able to hit them. The AI for the game is fine for a mobile game. It's nothing impressive and it's nothing to rave about, but it's not anything necessarily terrible. There are times when enemies would get stuck on shields, and there are also times where if you got too far away from them, they just wouldn't do anything. They would just stand there like they were waiting to load in. Now that I'm done talking about the lukewarm gameplay, I'm going to talk about the story, and I have a few problems with it. So now we'll go to talk about the story. As mentioned before, this game takes place between the events of Halo 3 and Halo 4, where a section of the Covenant invade a planet called Dratheus 5, in turn breaking the ceasefire created during the Human-Covenant War. So now that suicidal aliens are attacking the planet, you play as Spartan Palmer and Spartan Davis as they try to repel the Covenant attacks. The Covenant decide to start their assault on the moon of Dratheus 5, called X-50. You play as Spartan Davis, and the missions are fairly uneventful. After those boring and uneventful missions, you then play as Spartan Palmer. Herself and a few Pelicans head down to Dratheus 5 to warn people that this is probably going to be a worse fight than they thought it was. But by the time they get down there, the Covenant have already invaded the planet. After killing some more enemies, and again, more boring and uneventful missions, you find out that X-50 actually isn't a moon. It's a Forerunner construct that is a weapon that the Covenant are trying to activate to blow up the planet. Okay, this makes no fucking sense. How the hell did no one figure out that this moon was a fucking Forerunner construct when space travel exists? You can go to this fucking planet whenever you want to in minutes. They have fucking UNSC facilities on the fucking moon. You cannot fucking tell me that there is no way that they didn't know that this was a weapon. And not only that, but the weapon is conveniently pointed directly at the planet. And it couldn't have been that hard to figure out. The Covenant found out about it at the start of their fucking invasion. And they even figured out how to activate it. Speaking of which, playing as Spartan Davis, you start a counterattack on the moon to try and shut down this Forerunner laser so that it doesn't blow up the planet. And surprisingly enough, the counterattack is successful, and you manage to shut down the laser. But actually no, fuck you. It activates anyway because it's unstable. Fucking whatever. The laser goes off and it blows up the fucking planet anyway. Switching back to Spartan Palmer, you lead an evacuation of everyone off the planet that is currently on fucking fire. After missions of doing some defending and getting people off the planet, you then decide to go after the prick who started this assault in the first place, Merg Vol. So you find out that Merg Vol's ship, for whatever fucking reason, is on Dratheus 5, and you end up stealing it. After finding out he's on X-50, you decide to head there and take out some anti-air guns so that you can start a full frontal assault to take this bastard down. After this, you play a mission where you have a boss fight with Merg Vol, and it's, okay. It's a 3-phase boss fight where the first phase he just kind of shoots at you for a bit, the second phase he can disappear and uses his energy sword, and the last phase he has a shield. The first 2 phases were a fucking cakewalk though, because all he did was sit there half the time, and there's infinitely respawning grenades so you can just chuck them at him and he'll just lose all of his health instantly. The only part that was even a least bit of a pain in the ass was where he disappeared using his energy swords, because those jackals and their needlers just track you everywhere. So after defeating him, you pin him on the ground and blow his fucking brains out, and then the campaign ends. The planet's fucked, Spartan Davis is dead, and the bad guy is dead. Cool. How fucking great. The biggest problem with this game's story is the fact that it is a simulation. You're not actually taking place in any of these missions, you're just seeing a retelling of them. I'm pretty sure this was deliberately done by 343 so they didn't have to do any character writing for Spartan Palmer or Spartan Davis, which is just so fucking lazy on their end, because they were definitely working on a better game in the meantime, weren't they? There was no suspense. I never cared because there was nothing to care about. The game's story is around 3 hours long, and normally that wouldn't be a problem for me, seeing as I prefer a shorter story with more in it over a game that is dragged out and is longer, but this game is the worst possible combo of short and yet it's bloated. It's just a whole lot of fucking nothing. They just list off events like it's a history book. I don't fucking care. I want to experience a story. If I really wanted to just read off the events, I would just go to a Wikipedia page, which I actually looked at for this video, and I got about as much enjoyment out of it as I did the actual game. If not slightly more, because at least on the Wikipedia page, I didn't have to play the game. Now, that would be the end of it, but unfortunately there's another 5 missions that are based on you going back to the moon orbiting Dratheus 5 to see what the Forerunner activity is all about. But I honestly can't be fucked to play this. I already hate playing the game, and I don't even feel like touching it again. Oh, what's that? You didn't finish the entire game? That means you don't have a legitimate opinion. Fuck you and your legitimate opinion. I played this game for 5 fucking hours and I wanted to quit after the first 30 minutes. I don't give a single shit. Anyway, angry tangents aside, let's move on to the graphics. The game's graphics look like those of a mobile game, which is very unsurprising. Everything is very small and looks kind of low poly, and from a distance it looks fine, but up close it looks really, really bad. The game is very overexposed and the lighting isn't very good, and unfortunately what this ends up doing is it brings out how low poly the graphics are, so it only does it worse. The cutscenes are pretty bad as well, and I've seen people complain about the new black and white watercolor Destiny 2 cutscenes and calling them lazy, but this game literally just has still images where they just have a few things moving around a little bit, which you can easily do with AI anyway. Not that the drawings are bad, just that it's kind of fucking lazy. I think it even would have been more interesting if they tried to go for more in-game cutscenes where they showed what was going on a lot more. I think it would have been much more interesting, but they decided to go with this, so I'm going to criticize that. The sound effects, such as the guns and the sounds of the elites, sounds like Halo, which is to be expected with a game like this. But I did run into a few things which at first I thought was a bug, but I ended up finding out it's very much intentional. That being that the energy swords don't actually make a sound when they're swung or when they hit you. They're just kind of silent when they make contact with you. I don't think it's that hard to add a sound effect of an energy sword hitting you, but whatever. I just need to keep fucking going with this, honestly. The music is also not very good. Nothing was memorable at all, and I found it to be fairly boring overall. The only thing that stood out to me was this fucking annoying yodel, which would never go away and was honestly quite distracting. It's actually quite upsetting, seeing as Halo is kind of known for its music. I was expecting to find something that was interesting in the soundtrack. But no, just like the rest of this game, it's shit. Anyway, moving on to the bugs, which is the main reason why I would not recommend this game at all. Almost every time I opened the game, I would have to alt-tab back to the game because it wouldn't just fucking show up on my screen. I couldn't even click it on my taskbar for it to show up. Sometimes when I tabbed out of the game because my friend sent me something or I got a notification, my game would just crash. This happened about half the time and it was a real 50-50 chance of whether it happened or not. And usually if it didn't crash, the game would just go into windowed mode, and then I would have to go into the resolution settings, change the resolution to something else, change it back to the resolution I wanted, and then it would be fine. And now on to the worst fucking bug that I encountered, and it's so fucking stupid that I'm just gonna retell my entire experience that I had with this bug. So I went to go and try and start the game, but the game wouldn't open. At first I thought it was the game files were bugged, so I did a diagnostic on the game files and Steam told me they were fine. Then I uninstalled and reinstalled the game, but I was still having the same problems and nothing had changed. So then I decided to check the forums and see if anyone had encountered this problem themselves. I was seeing people say you had to go into properties and change some of the settings, but even then, that didn't work. What it ended up being was it was my fucking controller being plugged into my computer. I would have never thought in a million fucking years that it was my controller that was the reason this didn't work. It was so fucking stupid, and I got so mad that this game had such a dumbass problem. The main reason this bug is a thing is because the game defaults you to keyboard settings when you open up the game. You have to manually switch it back to a controller if you want to use one, or else the game will crash. As far as I know, this is a problem since the game has come out, and 343 hasn't fucking fixed it. Nor will they ever, frankly. I'm just so fucking done talking about this game. Can we get to the outro, please? So yeah, this game has taken up almost a month of my life, and if I could get that time back, I absolutely would. That aside though, this game is cheap at $1.29, so I would not recommend the game at all. If anything, if you still enjoy Halo, I would recommend you save an extra few bucks and buy Halo 3 ODST, which is $5.50. This game is a million times better than Spartan Assault will ever be and is worth the extra few dollars. Microsoft wanting this game to be a mobile game really dragged the potential down and made it a simulation instead of actually creating any characters, which ruined any potential for anything to happen. This game fucking sucks, and it's a game I will never play again, and I hope you don't either, and if you do, I will break into your house with a pack of Jewish monkeys who will steal your wallet and break your hand, so when I refund the game, you can't buy it again. See ya, bitches. I'm actually going to be taking a short break after this video comes out. Right after I finish my Nocturne video, I've been working on this video non-stop, and it's honestly been draining for me. It doesn't help that this video was made on a game that I fucking hate, but I can assure you that my next video will be on something I actually enjoy. It'll be a much shorter video, but hopefully you guys can enjoy that, because it's going to be on a game that I actually like, so that'll be interesting. Anyway, thank you all for watching, thank you all for the support, and I'll see you all later. Bye.